friends, and welcome back to my channel. In today's video, I'm going to be talking about some more houseplants that you find in like pretty much most plant shops, if not like grocery stores, supermarkets and stuff, that are very, very common, but I would not necessarily suggest if you are new to the plant collecting hobby, new to taking care of plants, a beginner plant parent, things that might be a little bit more complicated than they seem. So that's what's happening today. I have done a sort of like part one to this video. I guess this is a part two. I have done a part one of this where I talk about more of plants like this. I will link it in the clickable eye and down below in the description if you want to find more plants that you should avoid. As a beginner, that's there if you want it. But otherwise, if you're new here and you don't know me already, hi, my name is Emma and I make houseplanty content all over the internet. So if you want to follow along with my houseplanty journey and maybe learn something along the way, stick around, watch some more of my videos and subscribe to my channel. If you are not new here, welcome back. I really appreciate you returning. Let's dive straight into this. This first one, I'm actually going to call myself out on this one as well because I mean, I didn't know any better at the beginning, but had I watched this video, I probably would not have gotten this plant as one of my first two plants. Literally, I got two plants the first time I bought plants, and this was one of them. It was a nerve plant. While they can be easy-ish, I feel like as someone who's new to the plant hobby, it can be it's kind of like jumping in the deep end. And I don't think I should have jumped in with one of them. I don't think it was a good place to start because they are extremely, extremely thirsty plants. They really, really like water. And if they do not get enough water, they will faint, like fully faint and look like they're dead, basically. They'll go fully wilted and it's gonna scare you. It scared me as a beginner plant parent. I freaked out the first time I saw mine faint. I thought I had genuinely killed it. I was like freaking out, not knowing what to do, running around and trying to figure it out. I mean, obviously, I Googled it and I learned that it was fairly normal quickly, but I feel like even still, having known that information, I wouldn't have necessarily recommended it to myself as a beginner. They also really like quite humid spaces. The only time I've been able to keep nerve plants alive for any sort of real amount of time has been in a terrarium setting. I think they do great in terrariums. So maybe if you really want one as a beginner plant parent, get one and put it into a terrarium or get one in a terrarium. They're often sold already in terrariums. And I feel like in that sort of space, they work really, really well. And you don't need to worry about them fainting as much. And I've found that mine have grown really, really, not excessively, but like very well in that sort of terrarium setting. So that's probably the best way to buy one if you feel like you absolutely must as a beginner, but I just wouldn't recommend it. I would save that for down the line when you're feeling a little bit more experienced. There are things that will cause you much less grief at the beginning and much less stress, which as someone new to the hobby, I don't want to be adding stress into your life in any sort of way. So nerve plants, probably not a good place to start. The next plant that I think you should avoid as a beginner is succulents. I know that's kind of a broad category and there's a lot that can encompass that, but I'm talking about like the general Echeveria classic succulents. And I am going to caveat this by saying that this is specifically advice for in the UK and other countries or areas of the world that are not very sunny, not very bright, don't get very much light, tend to stay quite cool, those sort of places, which is where I live. I live in the UK. Succulents and Echeveria are probably not going to do as well as you want them to here. And I know it's difficult because everyone's like, oh yeah, succulents are easy. That is not my experience with houseplants. I've been collecting houseplants for several years at this point, and I have found succulents hard this entire time. And even still, I have just gotten rid of a succulent that wasn't getting enough light, even though I was giving it light in the brightest possible space in my home, and it was still growing super duper leggy. unfortunately. And that is a pretty common problem, especially when you don't live in a place that has a lot of sun. Obviously, if you live somewhere like Arizona or like a desert, they're probably going to be absolutely fine and love it because they're getting the light that they really, really want. Or if you really want to put them under intense, extra bright grow lights, you could do that. But as a beginner, I feel like that's not something that you just have on hand. And so succulents probably aren't the best place to begin. They will end up getting really, really leggy. Pretty much guaranteed. That is my full experience with succulents, is them going really, really leggy and just not looking very good. When they grow all etoliated, I don't think they look very nice. And unfortunately, they won't go back to not being leggy unless you like chop them back all the way and kind of start over in like a very even brighter, warmer spot. So it's kind of just a recipe for disaster right off the bat. And I don't know, I just feel like I've gone through so many and they've not done well that it's just not worth it. Also, I had succulents when I was living in California because it was like, that was the thing in 2015 to like buy succulents. And I killed those as well. So given that was before I knew anything about plant parenting, I was, I guess in theory, technically a beginner plant parent because I was a new plant parent because I just bought these succulents randomly and I killed them. Or they got leggy or I overwatered them, and it's just really, really easy to go wrong with them. And once you start going wrong with them, there's kind of no going back, unfortunately. Up next, we are going to be talking about Stromanthe Triostar or Triostar, or just Stromanthe in general. These plants are closely related to Calatheas, and so they tend to follow the same general rules I have with Calatheas, which I talked about in my last one of these videos. I find Calatheas and Stromanthe very, very, very finicky. And I know it's difficult to not get one as a beginner because they are so striking with that sort of green, white, and pink foliage. It just looks really, really nice. It's really attractive and it can add like a lot of visual focus if you're bringing one into your home. But they are so picky, and similar to Calatheas, they are spider mite magnets as well. They also require really high humidity, of course, and if you don't give them that, they will crisp up and die. But also they like to stay very, very moist, but not too moist, because if you water them too much, they're gonna get root rot. And to be honest, I wouldn't even suggest these to like a very, very well-versed plant parent, unless you're living in a greenhouse and it is humid in your home. These plants are probably not going to be happy, unfortunately. And so it's just not worth it. I mean, maybe they would have enough sort of moisture and humidity if you put them into semi-hydro, but I've personally not done that with Stromanthe, and so I can't necessarily suggest it. I feel like it would probably be a better bet. But again, as a beginner, you're not just gonna hop into semi-hydro right off the bat. That's not the place to start, and you don't want plants who have needs so high that they're creating a higher barrier to entry into the hobby. I feel like there's just so many other nice, colorful plants that you could get that would be a better option in that case. Speaking of colorful plants though, and specifically pink plants, I do not recommend the Pink Princess one bit to beginners or anybody. And I know it's tempting because Philodendron Pink Princess used to be a very uncommon and sought after plant. It was one that was really, really difficult to find, but they have now since become mass produced, and the likelihood of you getting a plant that looks and grows as well as you see the ones on Instagram doing is very, 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 very low, unfortunately. And it's difficult because it's so easy to see the ones online and really, really want them. I saw the ones online and I was super duper drawn to them and wanted to get one for myself because, I mean, those dark burgundy greenish leaves with the pink spots, yes, absolutely. That sounds like something really, really fun. But I found that they are really, really difficult to grow in that sort of compact form with really, really good variegation. And maybe it was that I wasn't giving it enough light, but I find that they grow much more spaced out in your home then, or at least in my home, than the ones online look like they did. And also, it is quite difficult to find ones that keep that really good pink. They can either go in two directions. They can go and put out all pink leaves, which aren't going to last very long because they don't have chlorophyll in them and can't produce energy for the plant, so the plant will kill off that leaf. Or they can go the other way and have no pink at all, and then you just have a normal dark green plant, which, I mean, it's fine and beautiful in its own way. But if you're going for a pink princess, it's just not going to be giving you the vibes that you originally bought the plant for. So even though they are now super cheap and available in all shops pretty much, I just wouldn't even go there. I don't think it's worth it. Another one is Rex Begonias. These are not for the faint of heart. I know, again, it's really easy to be drawn in by them because they're typically, in my experience, really like flashy and sparkly, and there's something to like just get into and that you really, really want in there because they can lure you in with their magical looking foliage. But they are, in my experience, quite difficult to figure out, especially if you haven't had a lot of practice getting into plants. I've only just started in my 5 years of plant parenting. I've only just started to be able to have a handle on Rex Begonias like this year. And given I wasn't trying extremely hard at the beginning, I wasn't trying very hard until this year, but I had several different ones throughout my early journey as a plant parent, and it kind of put me off begonias altogether, which sucks because begonias can be really, really amazing plants. I've learned that now since trying more of the sort of cane ones. So if you desperately would like a begonia, I highly recommend cane begonias as the viable option. The ones that have the polka dots or the spots, those are a lot easier to get into and to learn how to grow than the sort of Rex begonias that require pretty much typically terrarium conditions. I don't know, it's difficult because begonias are one of those things that like you also see growing outdoors. I know people who grow them in their gardens, and that makes sense, but at the same time, all of the Rex begonias I've tried to grow indoors have just like melted, essentially. And I don't understand exactly what's going on there, but it means that they're not the easiest to get going, and if you don't know what you're doing, then you probably will melt them. I melted so many begonias, especially early on in my collection, and like I said, I've only just gotten to the point where I can hopefully keep these ones alive at this point, but yeah, I just don't think it's a good place to start. But if you have to, cane ones, because those are great and they grow quite quickly as well, which is awesome. And they're less finicky when it comes to humidity too, which is great. And then lastly, we have Crotons. And this is aside from the fact that I am just in general not a fan of Crotons and how they look. The sort of red, yellow, orangey foliage, not for me personally. But aside from that, they will also throw an absolute fit by being moved, changed in any sort of way. It is actually highly likely that when you take yours home from the store, it might look amazing in the store. You'll take it home and it's just gonna drop all its leaves because they're Crotons and they just freak out when they get moved. That is a totally normal thing for them to do. And then you're left with a bare stick-like tree. And to be honest, that's just not the vibe I would be going for in my home, regardless of the color of the leaves. And so it's just not worth it. And then also, once you have them in your home, if you've got it to like get to a good point, if it grows too big for that spot, or if you decide you need to move it for any reason, if you move it somewhere else, it's going to dislike that. It's not going to enjoy that move. It will probably freak out again and drop more leaves. I feel like when I had a Croton, it was just constantly dropping leaves all the freaking time. And I don't even think I was moving it all that much. Maybe I was. But I tried it for long enough that between the color and the fact that it was actually a really finicky one, I just didn't think it made sense to keep in my collection. And as a beginner plant parent, even if you really, really like that coloring, I feel like you can get something in like the Philodendron family that has more orange and stuff, and it will be easier to take care of, even if it is a little bit more uncommon or rare than a Croton, just because Crotons freak out at you if you do anything to them at all. They are pretty fine in terms of watering. They do like a lot of light, so maybe that's another thing. If you're somewhere that's not very bright or you don't have grow lights, then maybe they won't like the light in your home and could grow leggy. But with the chance of them dropping all of their leaves basically as soon as you got them, that is just not something that I would want to set you up for as a beginner plant parent. So, best to just not and move on to a different plant, because there are loads of other beautiful plants out there, and there are definitely some that are easier. And I mean, I've made loads and loads of videos on easier houseplants. I will link those videos down below and in the clickable eye, and you can watch those. There are so many more options than the plants that I have just mentioned. That will be easier to take care of and will give you a better early on experience, which, I mean, is the whole reason why I'm making this video. I just want you to have a good early on experience in your plant care, and hopefully it'll help. I just want more people to enjoy plants, basically. So that is it. That is the rest of my list of plants I believe that you should avoid as a new plant parent. Again, don't let me stop you from getting them. If you really, really want them, do it at your own risk, but this is just my opinion from my years of experience in this sort of planty hobby. So listen to me or not, that is your choice. But anyways, I really hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please give it a thumbs up down below and leave a comment on other houseplanty things you'd like me to talk about in the future. If you agree with these as well, or if you don't agree, or if you have any more suggestions of common houseplants that you wouldn't suggest to a beginner, let me know them down below in the comments, and I will hopefully be able to make more of these or other houseplanty care videos down the line in the future. Also, subscribe for more. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you're having a fantastic day, and I will see you in the next one. Do not forget to keep growing. Bye!